The quickest way to intimacy is through vulnerability. And what vulnerability looks like is taking a risk where you're putting it all out there.
We want far more affirmation for the 5% of the work we did than we ever give you for the 95% of the work you do.
You can somewhat heal a relationship that way, but it will not be healed 100%.
Giving to give
It's a big one.
versus giving to get may not be reciprocated.
Welcome to the Couple Cure. Here's Jay and Laurie Pyatt.
The third question is, what feels like intimacy to you outside the bedroom now?
The thing that we talked about in my group, somebody asked the question, how do I untangle emotional intimacy from physical intimacy?
Wow.
And my first response was, oh, look at the time. I think we're done tonight, because it's a complicated question. For guys that are have compulsive sexual behavior dysfunction, we have so enmeshed emotional and sexual intimacy, and not even really intimacy, but we bring our emotions to a sexual situation to gloss over the emotions. My behavior has been, when I had an emotion I didn't understand in active addiction, I went and found porn so that I wouldn't have to feel the emotion and I could move on and feel, quote unquote, better, or at least different. And so I just was doing kind of the same thing to you because I thought that's how this worked. I had an emotion and I brought it to Laurie expecting her to fix it through physical intimacy at one point. And now the way I see this is that emotion, that thing that I'm processing, struggling with, whatever right now, if I bring that to her in a way of not fix this for me, but here's something that's going on for me right now. Here's what came up for me today. And so that actually, it's funny that it actually kind of happened this week, that I was reading something that a guy had written, and it impacted me. And this was me being emotionally intimate. Was I said to Laurie, I read this and it's left me feeling pretty sensitive and kind of weepy. And she put her hand on my shoulder, and that was it. Not that was it from her, but that was me being emotionally intimate with her, was being honest about how I'm feeling without making a big production of it and the whole thing. And because I used to do that stuff too. And so separating that from physical intimacy, that I can share what's going on for me with her. She might validate it. She might say, oh, okay. But I'm not expecting her to fix it or take it away or change how I'm feeling, like to go from kind of a negative emotion to feeling better because of physical intimacy. And so the being able to share what's going on for me and get her to respond to that and feel like we're connected, what we talked about in the previous question was a Thanos, that she did a Thanos with me because she was feeling disconnected. And so, that to me now is a big thing, but we do have shared experiences in either playing with the cats or being on our canoe or
even just sitting outside on our deck.
Yeah.
Things to do.
Where we're sharing space, we're sharing emotions. I mean, not a lot. I mean, that was the first time in a while. I think maybe a couple of weeks ago I said something similar.
You were really, really being impacted probably 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. So to me, that's changed, and I don't feel like it needs to be this really high experience.
Right.
It doesn't need to be like, oh, we've got to go to an amusement park and go on the biggest ride. And, it's much more my expectations of what feels connecting is doesn't require that much intensity. And I get more from it because, number one, I'm able to receive it. Go back to question number one. And number two, I'm not making her do all the heavy lifting in the process.
Yeah. I would say the quickest way to intimacy, and again, this would be a phase 3 thing for her. It would be after you guys have healed a lot and you feel like you can trust him again. For him, as long as she's open to it, you might even try starting it right off the bat in phase when she's in phase 1, but it will be a one-sided thing at that point. I think we've said it out here before, but it bears repeating because it's so true. The quickest way to intimacy is through vulnerability.
Right.
And what vulnerability looks like is taking a risk, really allowing yourself to be emotionally naked to where you're putting it all out there. And I mean, you can tell her, I'm taking a risk here, so please be gentle with me. And I wouldn't say like, these are all the lies you didn't know about. That's a full disclosure moment. She needs a lot of support surrounding her. That needs to be in a very structured thing, but we're talking about emotions you haven't talked about before, vulnerabilities you're feeling,
right,
things like that. So quickest way to intimacy is through vulnerability, and quickest way to be vulnerable is to take a risk. So Jay, my question for you is, you rub my feet a lot and I just love it. I just feel like if you ever see cats that are just like sitting and just like purring and they're awake, they're sitting out and they're just purring. We can be watching a show and they'll start stroking my feet and I'm just like, oh, I just melt. But when you first started doing that, did that feel like a risk? Because it was one-sided. It wasn't like you said, okay, no, me.
Yeah.
It kind of happened late. You started doing it late.
Yeah. I guess I haven't really thought about it, but what you're saying is true, that giving to give,
It's a big one.
giving to give versus giving to get may not be reciprocated. And that's okay. Because if my value is only coming from her response, I'm in trouble. If my value is intrinsic and comes from God, I'm fine. I can give to her. And if she is in a space where she doesn't want to give, can't give, is not even able to think about it, I'm going to be okay. But when I'm bringing an expectation, that's where there's going to be a problem, right? Because if I'm giving to get, I'm expecting something to come back to me, and when I'm expecting her to do something in return, that's manipulation. I'm only doing this thing so that you do something for me, and if you don't acknowledge that I did this thing, I can be pissed at you, and that's what expectations do.
We've talked to guys about that, and some of them are like, no, it has to be 50-50. And I mean, you can somewhat heal a relationship that way, but it will not be healed 100%. You have to be ready to give with no thought of getting anything in return, because that's self-sacrifice.
Right.
That's taking a real risk. Whereas you're saying like, I'm only going to give this if I get something in return.
Right.
That's not going to lead to much.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about the giving to give versus giving to get. Before, were you about to say something? Before you talked about being vulnerable, how is that different than when I first went to church and you were on the slides? We used to go to this church. It was like a hospital, and the worship was just so good. And, very, very touching. And the first time I went, Jay was back on the overhead projector. So they had a break between, the worship time and the teaching time. And you came back and you were like wiping tears. And you were like, sometimes I get choked up. And I felt like that was kind of fake.
Right.
This was before we started dating.
Right.
It was the first time we actually talked to each other that I was like, okay, so you're not, this Frankenstein at work. But was that fake? And how, or do you even remember?
No, I remember, because it'll still happen now, where there's a spiritual moment, and I mean, they do hit me,
Mhm.
but there was and that's something else I wanted to talk to about, or speak to in this, is the performance piece, right? There's true vulnerability, and there's performing, and addicts, you're performers. You may not want to take ownership of that, but you need to. We perform we were trained, whatever, to think that that's the only way we're going to get what we need, is to have this big performance and make this big show. I could have walked back there and said to Lori, hey, how are you enjoying this? Or whatever. But instead I made it about, look at how this is impacting me, kind of a thing.
That might have been what I was picking up on.
Yeah. And it's totally okay that it was impacting me. It was and it could have been done differently, but it still came across as a performance.
Yeah. And it would have made a bigger difference to me had you just wiped the tears away. And like I saw the lashes, sticking because they were wet, or even up front, if you've been wiping them versus
having to talk about it.
Just like,
yeah.
I mean, he didn't do that. But
so Jeff Foxworthy talks about, we want far more affirmation for the 5% of the work we did than we ever give you for the 95% of the work you do. And he's not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, it's kind of a male trait, but number two, it's definitely an addict trait to say, look at all the stuff I did. And we like cleaned one plate.
Yeah.
It's just, it's.
I do that every day.
Yeah.
12 times a day.
Yeah. I mean, real vulnerability has no performance.
Right.
It is humble. It's matter of fact. Sometimes, I need to share what's going on for me. And sometimes that vulnerability is, she's intuitive. She's paying attention. She knows maybe something's going on for me.
Yeah.
So.
And I know that there's been times where, I have felt the pull to, showcase what just happened for you. And for me, it's typically been like, no, like I don't want to, I don't know. I think there's a scripture or a parable where, don't show your good deeds before people. That can be seen as a good deed, being touched by the Spirit or being touched by a worship song. So I've always gone in the opposite direction, wipe my eyes and try to act normal. So if you're an addict and you feel that way, try that. Let your being touched be between you and God. You might want to write them down, especially if it's new to you, or if you're, getting back into that mode of being close to God, just to say, I do have a record of being touched by God, so that the enemy can't come and take it away from you. Like, right. You're so far from God, or he's not around, or you're all alone. Yeah. But there is a way to combat that, as far as wanting to publicize
right.
being touched by him.
Yeah.
Just in bringing up this conversation, right as you started to answer, I started to have tears coming in my eyes. And I don't know why. I think it's just like, oh my gosh, we've come so far. And, intimacy with you is, it's just there. I remember, I don't know if we've talked about it out here before, but we were at a C.U.R.E group. It's kind of like a 12-step group. And we had gone from the big worship moment or,
Corporate group to individual or smaller groups. Yeah.
And there was a cute girl that walked by, and you were like, me and Lori were together even though we weren't together.
Yeah.
And I mean, I felt like that when I went to those, those meetings, like I still felt connected to you. And that was right as things were turning around for us.
Right.
But I did start to feel that intimacy growing.
Mm-hmm.
But now we just have fun together. We've created so many good memories that aren't big, huge ones. That it's not candlelit dinners. It's not trips to Paris.
It's getting soaking wet in a kayak and having something to laugh about later.
Yeah. It's, he just on the way down here, our cat, Jay earlier was like, Lori was just so cute. I said, no, Mort, you can't come down here. And Mort was on the stairs and he just did that. and so as I was coming down here, he's like, okay, watch, Lori. And just slowly shut the door. And he's like, see right there, that's what he did. And Mort was just sitting there, But so it was just so cute. And it's, raising those kittens together, having shared experiences, even just sitting out on the deck, it's like if we're at home and we're not, at work with clients, then typically we're doing our research or we're working on, video editing or whatever. So we're on our computers, but we're typically close together. And, we'll just, every once in a while, we'll reach over and touch the other, or we'll just look up and look at each other and just like, this is the life, this is. And the interesting thing is he started building that deck in 2010. It was right after D-Day. He worked so hard on it. And it's one of those places where we really, I don't know. I think what I'm talking about is we're just able to have presence together. It's not that we always have to be doing something. We always have to be on a date. We always have to be talking or staring lovingly into each other's eyes or whatever. It's just being with each other, and chilling together. And man, he can crack me up. And I know that's one thing I like about you is you've always been really funny, and we can just riff off of each other. It's like he's funny, then I jump right on board, then we just kind of escalate this whatever, whacked out story we've come up with together.
I will not tell you the word of 2025.
Oh yeah, we're not going to talk about that. So it's just like, it's being friends, but it's being more than friends. We've been through so much. We've gotten so far.
Yeah.
And I want that for you guys. And that's kind of why we make these videos. So Did you have anything else?
No, these have been interesting questions. Hopefully they're helpful to the people that are watching.
And if you are watching and you want to say thank you, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button. Those things can really help us. So, and it's free. So, and with that, we're going to let you guys go. We've been sitting here for quite some time today. So,
Thanks everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye guys.